Hi there, folks. Welcome to another episode of the A Minute to Midnight Show. My name's Tony, coming to you from New Zealand. And with me on the show today, I have Eric Stogner in Georgia, USA. And Eric's been a guest a few times on the show, and it's really good to have you back again today.
Likewise, it's great to be back. It's been a little bit of a gap here, but good to be back.
Absolutely, and there is certainly plenty of stuff we can talk about, and lots been happening just lately. Maybe we could just give a quick recap on some of the things that have just happened. Like,
I know.
Yeah, I'll let you take it. Yeah.
I was going to say, sometimes we banter like, how's the weather there? And I would say the weather itself is something I've noticed in our area. I happen to live about an hour east of Atlanta, which has the busiest airport in the nation. So if the sky chemtrailing has been just what's been ejecting out of planes, I guess we're at ground zero for that. And I've stopped checking the weather. I can show you screenshot after screenshot of 10-day forecasts for the whole summer, where every day is literally the same. It's gray every day. It rains a little bit every day. There's a thunderstorm in the afternoon. Typically doesn't amount to much. And go repeat, wash, rinse, repeat every day. That's our weather. I've lived in Georgia all of my adult life. I've never seen weather that behaved like this. So that's something that in some ways is new, but maybe new to the listeners, but not new to me here in Georgia. It's been going on all summer, and that's kind of bizarre. But just this week, I don't actually watch a lot of news. I try and insulate myself from it. I figure whatever's really important will get to me. And yet, just preparing for today, I just glanced at what's going on, and even I was aware of things like, for instance, is anyone aware that there was a shooting at the CDC in Atlanta the last couple of days? Had you heard that?
No.
Yeah, it was an active shooter incident. Didn't last long. I don't know the details of it. But apparently a shooter was shooting, and all I did hear is that the person was disgruntled about the way things went down in the pandemic and was taking it out on the CDC. So that's kind of interesting. It's on one hand, no one wants to condone violence, but that's an interesting story that's happening. It's understandable in some ways, and that's in the news. What else happened this week? Apparently, Washington, D.C., is now listed, according to Donald Trump last night, as the most dangerous capital in all the world, including places like Colombia and other places in the world where you might think they have a high crime rate. But apparently it's Washington, D.C., and so who wouldn't want to have crime under control? So apparently the feds are stepping in. Washington, D.C. is going to be federalized. Sounds a little bit like martial law.
Well, it is. It sounds like martial law for the next 30 days anyway, and we'll see what happens after that.
Yeah. I mean, that's a first, and that's this week. I'm only restricting my current events to this week. Did you hear about the steel plant that blew up in Pennsylvania?
Yes, because obviously Pittsburgh, for me, is kind of not close to home, but close to almost my second home, like I know Pittsburgh a bit. So, yes.
I grew up, I went to school in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which at the time had a huge steel plant. Beth Steel was in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. And so, yeah, we know that the coal and the steel there historically has been a lot of steel production in the state of Pennsylvania. And so it's nice that there was a plant there, but that explosion is going to take that plant offline, I would assume, for a year or two. Where are we going to get the steel to rebuild the? Is it taking
the whole plant down? Will it take the whole plant down, or just that part of the plant?
Well, I don't know enough about the details, but most steel plants are sort of linear in nature, and it's like if you take out one section, it stops everything. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was sort of an R&D area, but one process leads to the next, to the next. So I assume this may knock them out for a year or two. So what's that going to do for steel prices and just general cost of manufacturing? And didn't we have a bridge, the Francis Scott Key Bridge, that we needed to rebuild? That has a lot of steel in it, I think. Maybe they'll make the new one out of aluminum or something. I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's obviously steel is an important facet of a lot of things. And Holly's dad used to work as electrical engineer in the steel plants in Pennsylvania and West Virginia. So it's kind of a little bit, close to home in a sense too. So, yeah, you mentioned the shootings and there have been a lot of those lately. And you read the news or whatever, and it's always, they had a long history of mental illness or something. It's never like, they are an evil person, they've always been a bad person. No, it's always a history of mental illness. But my first question is, okay, so they've had a history of mental illness. Has there been some programming done to them at some point? Is it that they trigger it to go and do things? Because, that would fit the narrative for gun control and that type of thing. And I'm not saying that they are, but some of them I do question and wonder whether they have been in some way, like MK Ultra program. So, which brings me just quickly, I won't spend a lot of time on it, but to an interesting point with the wearables. They're talking about wanting every American RFK Jr. wants every American with a wearable. And we know they're moving towards 6G. And that should be online by 2030, they reckon. And 6G is a whole different level from 5G. And Leo Hohmann actually put out an article on his Substack yesterday talking about the wearables and the mind-reading capability that they're working on with these wearables. But not only that, they can read people's mind with the wearables, and using 6G, they can also put thoughts into people's minds as well. And so I know they've been working on that type of technology for many years. And so that's just another angle of all this, control and transhumanism and all of that they're moving us towards. So that's just a little...
No matter what whatever thing is hitting the news, I think we can be certain it's about tracking and controlling, and to your point, maybe even idea planning and getting people to... maybe individuals to do things. I even wonder, I just keep thinking of the way the pagers blew up targeted people, in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And I thought, what will they be able to do with our targeted devices? Like, they'll know you've got this with you, sleeping next to your bed, probably charging at night is probably your alarm clock. I'm starting to take steps that maybe I don't want it in my room where I sleep. And, regardless of what's going on in our sleep, like, are we going to get bombarded with something coming out of our phones? Or they'll just, again, know exactly where we are because we take them everywhere. So, whether it's a wearable or what they're doing with these electronics, I think that's it. And even back to the gun control, we've all been sensitive in the U.S. since we prize our First Amendment rights and the right to bear arms. And so we're always wary of taking our guns away. I assume in the very near future, if it's not already, guns of the old style will be like pea shooters. They'll be insignificant in the new warfare. And so maybe the shooters are not so much about legislation to remove guns, but it's just more reason that we need tracking all the time. We need facial recognition and cameras everywhere, whether it's the migrant problem or the health issue or now violence in the streets, whether it's in DC or crime. I think it's all gonna, all these problems have been fomented and created so that we can bring in the solution that was always desired, which is, complete tracking and tracing, cameras everywhere. So whatever it is, I think that's what it's contributing to. All the other stuff is just the supporting reason to get us there.
True. And, with the DC thing, I mean, that's one city. And we saw them have the National Guard and so on in LA earlier as well a few months ago. And so, I mean, it is a slippery slope, I suppose, to federalizing and martial law from different cities here and there and, all over the place. I don't know. It's kind of concerning. And for people, just with immigrating and that type of thing, there's a lot of nervous people, let's put it that way, people traveling to America these days. And there's constantly stories about people sort of held in detention centres and things, which for reasons that seem hardly significant. I was reading an article this morning about a New Zealander that's stuck in a camp in one of those detention centers in Texas, simply because only half their visa got approved, and they thought a whole visa had been approved and the other half was still in processing. So when they flew back to America, they were taken to a detention center and that type of thing. So there's a lot of nervous people in that area as well. So, yeah. So what else has been going on?
Well, one other thing in the news, there was an announcement Trump made that we've got to rapidly increase the United States capability in drone production because, we can't let big bad China outproduce us and everything. We need to be global leaders in drone production. And, it sounded like, they always sell it for some convenience. You'll be able to get Starbucks coffee delivered to you, but they want to make sure the drones don't fall prey to any kind of interference. In other words, like a military application. So, what do we need drones for? I don't need Starbucks delivered to me at my house. I'll make my own coffee. I have my own Keurig. I don't even drink coffee, for Pete's sake. But the point being, what are drones really going to be used for? That's going to be the ultimate mass surveillance, when a drone can follow you around high in the sky. You're not even aware of it, and watch you walk into a building and track you. I mean, we've seen a few years ago, even what they call like suicide murder type drones, where they're the size of your palm and they can be programmed to take out a person. They're doing facial recognition, looking for one person, and it just zaps you in the head and you're gone. You remember those videos of those little yellow tiny drones?
Yeah, yes. I think there was an Elon Musk warning production at one point. But yeah, that technology is definitely there. It's just a matter of using it. And you mentioned China. Well, they're already advancing quite heavily in terms of using drones for warfare and robots and that type of thing. So, yes, you've got to keep up with the Joneses or be better than the Joneses. So America has to beat China at its own game or whatever. And you can understand that. But yeah, I look at it this way and think, well, it's just the Bible predictions of the end times and the way it will look coming to pass. So you can't stop it if it's Bible prophecy, really.
Well, and we in America, we always need a boogeyman. So it used to be Russia. We got to hide for their nukes and everything. Now it's China with all their technology. So we always have to have this phantom menace, when the truth is, for the globalists, I think China is their goal for the world. China has had mass surveillance and social credit scoring systems and track their people much better than anyone else. So it's not so much that we've got to surpass them to beat them. It's no, we got to catch up to them and subjugate the rest of the free world, or the formerly free world, or the people who thought they were once free, with these techniques. And, I always like a good movie reference or something. Do you remember the TV series, The X-Files?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you remember, too, that it went off the air and then it rebooted and came back on the air a few years ago? So it's the same two main characters, Scully and Mulder, right? And they had come back on screen. They looked a little older, but they did their best. But anyhow, there was one episode in particular. I don't remember the title of it, but in this episode, the entire show, there was almost zero dialogue. There was no interplay hardly between the two of them or anyone else. And the entire episode was filmed in a futuristic restaurant. And so Scully and Mulder were served food in an entirely robot AI kind of driven environment, where a robot cooked the food, served the food, they ate the food, they tried to pay for the food. Something was starting to go kafooey. By the time they get home to their technologically advanced houses, it was all this technology going kafooey. Like their smart houses weren't opening for them. The fireplace was catching on fire when they didn't ask for the fire to come on. And eventually a drone swarm came around them and nearly, was attacking them. And so the whole thing was, to me, twofold. It was like, this is the world. Technology is dehumanizing people. So they don't even talk to anybody. People aren't even making each other's food in a restaurant. But then it showed technology gone amok, basically going after the people. And again, it ended with the climax of like robots chasing them in a warehouse and drones flying around them. And even when I saw this, probably, 3-4 years ago, whenever it was, I thought, none of the things they portrayed are not in existence. Everything we saw did exist today. It's not maybe happening quite like that yet, but it's just portraying where we are and where we could go. So again, the business about the U.S. needing to catch up with China in drone production, that doesn't sound good. Yikes.
Well, and AI, they've got to be the leader in AI and things. So everything is accelerating rapidly. I just see all the technology for the Beast system being rapidly put into place. And once they get 6G online, well, that's probably the final piece of the puzzle in a way to get it all together. For everything, for surveillance and tracking, and not only that, but putting thoughts into people's heads and different stuff. So there's a lot of people out there sending out information and warning people about what's going on and different things. But what I think you and I have both figured, well, I figured a long time ago, but a lot of people, probably know it, but don't always have the discernment. But there's people out there that are giving you bites of truth and a certain amount of truth, and yet underlying it there's a sort of a lie as well. I'll just quickly read a little bit of a scripture from 1 Timothy 4. It says, "Now the Spirit expressly says that in later times some will depart from the faith, giving heed to deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons, and speaking lies and hypocrisy, having their own conscience seared with a hot iron." Now, I won't read the rest of that, but I can see that, like playing out in a sense too, with people having a certain amount of truth, and there's hypocrisy in the truth-telling movement, appearing truth-tellers, when I think a lot of them are controlled opposition. And we're going to see people buying into the lies and the deception, and that's how we'll get the Beast system really taking full authority and power, because people will be deceived. A strong delusion will come upon them. So I think there's a lot of voices out there now presenting a bunch of truth, but there's an underlying new age lie or something else in it, or half-truths and so on. So I'll get your thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, and that's actually kind of exactly where I wanted to spend the rest of the time today. And like you said, there's so many references about the need for truth in Scripture. Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." So that's one of his top three things he self-describes. And then in Matthew, the disciples, asked him eventually, "Well, what will be the sign of your return?" And he said, "There'll be many things, earthquakes and then this and wars, rumors of war." But the first thing out of his mouth, Jesus said, "See to it that you be not deceived." And so to me, that's, if you had to put a capstone on what to watch for and what to be careful about, it's deception. And so that's a big broad category, right? Deception. What does that all mean? I mean, there's little deceptions and big deceptions, and we're all part of a truther movement. And suddenly it's getting popular for people to be in truther movements, and I like the truth, right? But then again, I also sometimes puzzle on, well, what makes for a good lie? There's a garden variety lie, and there's a bald-faced lie. I had to look that up. Is it bold-face or bald-face? Apparently it's both, but more commonly it's bald-face, meaning unhidden, unmasked lie. It's bald. And then there's the cunning lies. Well, which lies are the more effective ones? The cunning lies, and the ingredients of a good lie has to be a lot of truth. So we're seeing that in whatever news is being told to us. They'll tell some partial truths, like, yes, the crime rate in DC is probably high. Yes, there's justification. There used to be plausible deniability. I guess there's plausible believability. How can we tell a lie with some plausible believability? So you got to mix a lot of partial, truth to make a good lie. And you could argue, one of the things they say when you get in court is like, are you going to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Like, that ought to be the standard, because I think we all know, like, the reason you have to say that is if you only tell a partial truth, you are shaping a lie, most likely. So yeah, I think that's a big part of the assignment we've been given, or the warning, is to be not deceived. And we can't just be gullible and get taken in by something that sounds true, and therefore, we're going to follow that person. No, you got to test the spirit behind it. You got to test, is this guy or gal telling the whole truth, or just are they shaping a narrative? And, are they telling you what you want to hear, So I feed you bread and circuses here, but I'm doing something behind your back you're not aware of, or it's ushering in, it's cloaking the thing that, well, we would never tell you this part, or we would never say the quiet part out loud. So yeah, I think deception is sort of the watchword and what I wanted to focus on for the rest of our time. And as believers, not only have we been warned not to be deceived, but I think it's wise to live in a way where we're alert to things and not get taken in. But what would be the most egregious deception of all is to be deceived about matters of the faith. And ultimately, we talk about this is the mark of the beast system, et cetera, et cetera. What does Scripture say about the mark of the beast? That, on one hand, we'll be highly compelled to take it because we won't be able to buy and sell. That's something that's very clear. It's not, some debate. What is the mark going to look like? Is it a name? Is it a number of a name? Is it on your head or forehead or both or one or the other? So, there's some nuances we have to be keen to and try and, suss out what is it? Is this the mark yet or not? It'll also involve some worship. But what does that even mean? Like, is it formal worship, or is it just worship is who I go to for my sustenance? So in a sense, like if you buy into a system, is that already worshiping it or receiving life from it? If you say, like, I can't live without my drone-driven Starbucks, so I'm going to give all my biometrics and I'm going to play into the system. Well, am I not perhaps worshiping the system that the beast has arranged? So all that to say, I kind of wanted to sound a quick alarm about good people who are telling partial truths. And just a little insider, if you ever read any of my articles a while ago, almost a year and a half ago, I wrote an article titled AAOX4, and I sometimes reference that just as shorthand. What it stands for is awake, alert, and oriented times what? Times 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And so quickly, all that scale means is like if you were knocked out in a car accident and the EMT comes to assess you, that's what they do. They're asking you questions. What's your name? What's the time? What date is it? They're trying to establish how shook up is your head. Are you awake and alert and oriented to where you are, who you are, when you are, that kind of thing. So I just paraphrase that category to say, I just evaluate all the voices we hear on, of course, mainstream media and alternate stream media, and even on good channels that I like to follow on YouTube and such. And I kind of rank them in my own mind on a scale of 0 to 4. 0 being you're totally delusional. I'm not even going to tune into you. You are hook, line, and sinker into every deception that's coming along. And then the opposite extreme is the 4. If you're at 4, and I only put a few people and a few channels in the 4 category, like this channel and a few of the guests here that have channels, 4 means, in my mind, you see what's going on in the world. You see something is amiss, but you also come at it from a Christian biblical worldview. And so you can draw the connections that, okay, this is satanic. This meshes with our understanding of what Revelation is saying or what the other prophetic warnings or signs are saying. So if you can connect it all the way to that level and say, yep, Satan, Lucifer, and we talk about this, and a lot of your guests do also, look at the UN agenda, that it's actually Luciferian, and all the connections with Blavatsky and all this New Age stuff. I mean, all these things are circling around a drain, and they're all coming up or out of that same, nasty drain. But I mean, there are a lot of people who point out real things, and then they don't make that connection. And not only do they sometimes point out real things that are useful, I like them, but then because don't have a Christian worldview of it, they might start making up their own worldview. So I'll pick on a few, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but these are big voices and influencers. I think they're pretty big on the internet, and I think they're worth just talking about. So one is Brett Weinstein and Heather Heying. This is a husband and wife team. They have an excellent channel called the Dark Horse Podcast. And during the pandemic, they were one of my great sources of truth. I love tuning into them because they're actually both evolutionary biologists and they're high-minded scientists. And what was refreshing is that these are science people who held on to their science and said, what we're seeing in this pandemic here is not playing out like good science should. So they were able to raise a red flag and say, and they did it very diplomatically, that, hey, something's not right here. So I got to respect them. Hats off to them. But they're also full-on atheists, and they're happy to admit that. They believe in evolution. It's their whole stock and training. So all I'm just saying is, if you listen to them for one bit of truth, just be aware that their worldview doesn't include a Christian explanation of things. So just got to take it with, your salt shaker, a grain of salt. Someone else that comes to mind is there's a channel that's out of the UK. I like some international news, and this fellow's name is Richard Vobes, and I love his channel. He's like this kindly older gentleman who I think he used to do travel channel advice in the UK, and so he would take you on his adventures in the English countryside and show you bits of nature. And I thought, oh, that's great. Well, during the pandemic, he also said, there's some things here that aren't right. And he noted what was going on in his case in British society, and how the media and the narrative was just not making common sense. So bravo to Richard Vobes for calling that out. To me, that's at least AAOX 2. He's at least awake and alerting things. But again, not a Christian, not in the least. And he doesn't make any bones about that. His most recent podcast said, he advocates good things like you do, like we should get away into nature and unplug and experience. But for him, that's like connecting with almost like Mother Gaia. And, that's as far as his spirituality goes. It's like, I believe in nature, and that's what life's about. Like, okay, don't, as Christians, let's what's that expression? Eat the meat and spit out the bones. Yeah. So there's some good meat, but I'm not sure we want to go get dragged down that path of, he's big into kind of some new agey things. And again, I just, maybe I'm speaking to people who are aware of these things, but if you're not, these are good people that sometimes are advocating things that aren't so good.
Yeah, and, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's dead right. We have to be so aware and realize that their worldview does shape everything, and their spirituality shapes their worldview. So while people can be very persuasive with the things they share and the truth that they do share, but it's like, sometimes I use an analogy. If you've got a flagon of water or something and you put a dark liquid in like Coca-Cola and shake it up, it's like the whole thing goes brown. So the little bit of Coca-Cola or whatever the brown liquid is, it could be the little bit of lie and the water's the truth, but the little bit of lie taints the whole bottle. So we have to be really aware of that.
Well, yeah. I mean, again, back to the definition of a good lie, it's a little bit of falseness that is mixed in with a lot of truth. Yeah. And that's all it takes to actually make a clever lie. Here's a big name that a lot of people maybe follow, Jordan Peterson. He's gotten really big. Is he big in the New Zealand?
Yeah, he's been to New Zealand, done tours here. Yep, speaking engagements.
And so on one hand, I find he is smart. He's fascinating. I get taken in a little bit by his conversations. But again, I know some Christians that are getting their theology from Jordan Peterson. And I always thought, like, he never quite admits who Jesus is in his role. And then there was an interesting, have you ever heard of Larry Alex Taunton and his show?
No.
He did a really good video for like an hour and a half, breaking down a Jordan Peterson video where it was Jordan Peterson he set it up that he was in the center of a circle of atheists. And he was basically going to take on and debate all these atheists one by one by one. They were each going to get their like chance in the ring against the great Jordan Peterson. And it didn't go well. Jordan did not represent the faith very well at all. And he would never admit, who Jesus was, kind of thing. So again, it's so, in a world with so much chaos and so much, 1 minute this is being sold as truth, and then there's another thing being sold as truth. I think it's easy to get taken in by different people that have a kind of a logical, almost Christian voice. And if it's not, I worry, like, what would be the greatest deception? Is there's going to be a false prophet and a one world religion that will be part of the beast system. So I think we've all got our radar up for, well, what's that going to look like? It'll probably be some sort of melding of Christianity and the Abrahamic religions. There'll be some Judaism in there. There'll be some Islam in there. We're all worshiping the same God. All paths lead to the same, this age of Aquarius, new age. And I think there'll be something for everyone. And truth will suddenly get sent by the wayside. And in fact, I think one of the biggest things, I know we're constantly talking about AI, right? And like, what kind of monitoring is it going to do? I think it'll be a subtle erosion. So now we're being trained to turn to AI and make AI think for us and all that. And soon no one's going to own a printed Bible anyhow, and no one's going to be able to do the mental gymnastics to flip through the Bible. So we're so used to just typing in a few keywords and let AI find it for us, even in the Bible. Well, all you got to do is shift a few words and suddenly meanings can pivot on a few keywords. And I think that's going to be a great danger. Wasn't it Noel Yuval Harari who said, not only are humans hackable animals, but he said directly, it's time that we rewrote the Bible.
Yeah.
It's like, and I think that funny, I'll go back to my concern about some of the channels or voices I mentioned. One of them, or two or three that I can think of, have made the comment that though they are not Christians, they like the effect that Christianity has on society. Like they realize that the world we live in, the values that people might follow if they are believers, makes for a better world. And so to me, that's a bizarre dichotomy, that you can say, I like the effects that Christianity has on the world, but I don't like it enough to believe in it myself.
Well, that's the thing, though, Eric. It comes down to Christianity is not about a religion. It's not about theology. It's about a relationship with Jesus Christ. And people can give mental assent to a lot of the teachings of Jesus, but what they see is a different Jesus than what the Bible actually, tells us Jesus was like. And Jesus did tell us that, you're either for me or against me. There's no half measures. And so people have this watered down kind of Jesus. And the same with the New Age. There's people that are truthers that are basically coming from a New Age perspective. And their Jesus is not the Jesus of the Bible. And it's funny because they will point out a lot of the evils that are going on, and yet they still hold to basic New Age beliefs, which were founded by Blavatsky and Alice Bailey and those type of people, and they don't get that connection. They're somehow still, wrapped up in some kind of a New Age, the universe type belief, and they don't get it that those people were the people that were, Alice Bailey was very instrumental in the whole United Nations, and Lucius Trust still is, and she was known as the mother of the New Age movement. So
absolutely,
there's a lot of people. People send me links. Oh, you got to watch this channel. I'm going to say, I won't talk about him, but David Icke. He's one of those people. It's like, no, that guy is off. Again, some truth, a lot of stuff that's off. So don't send me David Icke videos if you're trying to get me to watch them and say, oh, look, David Icke said something good or whatever. So there's a lot of these types of people. We could spend hours just on names. I think that's probably covered enough of them. People just need to use discernment and realize that if it doesn't weigh up with Scripture, you got to be very, very wary, because the Bible tells us where this is all heading.
Exactly. And again, I think my note, if I were going to sound a note here, is like, deception is not good at any level, but the most dangerous deception is spiritual deception. That's the one you don't want to get wrong. You don't need to accurately predict and see what all, control measures are coming. But when push comes to shove, you want your faith to be genuine, and you want to be able to discern spiritual truths more than any other. And you talked about, all these people who their kind of Christianity is whichever way they want, and mixing in other beliefs and everything. for whatever reason, even from a young child, one or two stories got impressed upon me, and I always thought of that parable of the sheep and the goats. Where Jesus is judging these people set before him, and he says, one side he separates the sheep, welcome, into my kingdom, basically, and the goats, I never knew you, is what he says, and they get pushed outside from the kingdom of heaven where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. And what always struck me is that when you read their dialogue, when they said, well, Lord, didn't I do these things in your name? And didn't I, cast out demons and perform all these things? And he never contradicts them. He just says, yeah, but you never knew me and I never knew you. And I think that is kind of a great picture of spiritual deception. You can think you're a believer, but you've deceived yourself. And that's the worst kind of deception of all, when you don't even understand where you stand in the scheme of things. You think you're a Christian, but you're not. And maybe, an actual Christian can see the difference, but when the individual themselves can't. So again, don't be spiritually deceived. Understand what's really going on. And it just stems from abiding with the Lord, especially in these times. And what's nice is the fringe benefits are his Holy Spirit guides you into truth. And that's how I think those of us that are truly AAOX 4, we see these things, not because we're so brilliant. I think we have some help over our shoulder. The Spirit is looking over our shoulder and prompting us, like, take a look at that, pay attention to this. And that's a deception. It's like having a secret decoder ring. Like we don't know everything, but we know some things. And I think that's the most important advice for anyone, is just abide with the Lord and be savvy to people who are claiming to be of the Lord or claiming to have insights, when what's their worldview? Ultimately, Donald Trump himself says things like, I'm a Christian, but I can't ever recall a time when I ever really needed to repent. It's like, what?
Yeah,
that's the core definition of being a Christian.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the other thing is that be careful. There are a lot of very charismatic voices out there that are very good at orating, and so they can lead people astray in mega churches, for example. And I guess I'm not saying every church that's tax deductible is necessarily bad, or I'm sure there are good teachers in them, but you got to question and look at, okay, if they're 501c3 or whatever else, whatever your country has is tax deductible, means they got to follow certain government protocols. So, if they say something that's out of line, they can lose the tax deductible status and so on. So you've got to, I think, use that as another arm of the discernment. Okay, what are these people teaching that is going along with the world, or is being careful not to offend somebody in case they lose their tax deductible status or they lose their donations base or whatever. So I'll leave it at that. I think we're pretty much covered, stuff. So just to finish, Eric, what would you tell people to do to keep themselves on track?
Well, it's time to double down on your faith and truly just abide in the Lord. That means read your Bible, find a few like-minded Christians and fellowship with them. And it doesn't all have to be, heavy duty talk about events at the end of the age. We don't know when we'll be lifted out of here on a rapture, or how much of the difficult times we're going to see, but we do know we need that relationship now. And the beauty is, it's not just fire insurance. Yes, that's great to have your eternal salvation. That's a core tenet you want and a benefit you want. But you can live the life now. You can gain such wisdom and insight just by being a believer and hearing God's voice. It is available. You just have to pray and ask for it and be patient and persistent and hear his still small voice. He will prompt you.
Thank you. Okay, so folks, you can find some of Eric's articles at aminutemidnight.com. So it's been great. We'll have to do this again soon. It's been a very enjoyable discussion. I found kind of pretty easygoing, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you for being back with me today, Eric.
Likewise, enjoyed it very much. Take care.
Bless you. Also, folks, please make sure you subscribe to us at aminutemidnight.com. You'll find articles on our website, including Eric's articles, as well as all our videos and so forth. We do run A Minute to Midnight 100% by donations. If you're able to donate, it's always much appreciated. So a big thank you to the few folks that do donate. If anyone else wants to help us, as I say, it's always appreciated. You can do that at our website, aminutemidnight.com. And the music used I written, played and recorded. God bless, and we'll be back hopefully with another video in a few days' time.